series outcome, but there's also been the case where the Mage mirror just trades in the very first couple of games. Mage wins on one side, Mage wins on the other side. So let's get ready and get into it in just a moment here with Viper versus Gaby. This is game one of the grand finals of Hearthstone Masters Orgrimmar. Hope you've enjoyed the past few days. Whoever wins this gets $25,000 and the most points to take home, but perhaps to call themselves a Masters Tour winner, defying all the odds despite it being the hardest set of competitions that Hearthstone has to offer. I mean, there's just a lot of pride on the line as well, TJ.
Absolutely. And we're getting to look at the opening hands here. Like Gaby's a lot more, Font of Power, Primordial Studies, you know, whatever. It's the Incanter's Flow that my eyes are going to right now. That Incanter's Flow, a huge deal. One of the main cards that you're looking for. Oh, Viper hits it as well. Both players with Font of Power and with the Incanter's Flow in the opening hand. We're off to a good start.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all. Pretty solid to start things off here. I think that if you look at the Encounter's Flow situation, what really starts to make it feel very powerful for Viper is the fact that he's got the card draw to back it up. How many times have we seen that Encounter's Flow not really amount to much, largely because the fact that they're not really doing a ton outside of discounting their hand. And so we shall see if that ends up becoming a difference maker here in this game, as Gaby is going to get onto the board with that one thief, but don't expect much to come out of it. Font of Power available for Viper here as well. But it doesn't have the hand space to support that.
Yeah, we're kind of in an interesting state right now where neither player really has gotten a huge hold of the board. The biggest card here is, though, the Refreshing Spring Water, right? Gaby has one in hand and will be able to start going for that burst. Already has board with an Apexis Blast in hand. So it's looking like Gaby's got a slight lead, I would say, in this mirror matchup. But Viper does have some tools to fight back. Second Incanter's Flow and a Cram Session in hand, but outside of the Font of Power giving him one of the cheap Mage spell damage minions, he doesn't have a way to sort of draw those extra cards. I wonder if he's going to take this more as a tempo approach or try and get this Incanter's Flow online and rely on hitting the big card draw to kind of have a huge impact in the next coming turns.
Yeah, we've seen that be the huge swing when you're behind on the board. That is absolutely one of the best things that you can look for, which is incredible amounts of card draw and a way to bring it all the way back with huge discounts. But for now, just kind of jockeying for a little bit of board position. Maybe these small minions can get a little bit extra damage in. You never know. Go ahead and see what he can pick up off of card draw. Additionally, too, if he's able to stick minions on the board with the Refreshing Spring Water, finds a Apexis Blast. Everything is coming up okay for Gaby here. And the Alar, that's a very difficult minion to deal with.
Very difficult to deal with, and Viper now has lost the board by a lot. And it's going to be tough for him to come back and then try and get his own game plan online. And Gaby doesn't have a lack of burn. Has a lack of card draw. That's a big thing. The only limiting factor for him is going to be mana and just finding the card draw that he needs. But still has Apexis Blast and Fireball in hand. If he can stick a little bit more damage from minions, he's going to be in a good spot. And Viper does pick up the Evolving Missiles. That could be good for the Alar. But it's hard to isolate it here since he doesn't have like a combustion to try and isolate it a little bit easier. And he doesn't want to throw like too much burn at the at these minions because then it just makes his overarching game plan even tougher.
Runs out on me.
It's all true. A lot of options on his display right now as Viper is on the rope. Notoriously a very methodical and slow player, which sometimes has gotten him into trouble in the past.
Yeah, he's running out of time.
Yeah. Fireball committed to get rid of Alar when he has devolving missiles. That's playing one of those things. Oh boy, where you're not happy to see from Viper's perspective, the freshman comes out, pretty well statted minion, and that's going to be more chip damage opportunity for Gaby. Texas Blast and Fireball is an additional 11, can continue to press in. This is looking very good for Gaby. And Viper does not have any way to deal with a wide board in a meaningful manner. The Reckless Apprentice is not good enough. The second copy of Refreshing Spring Water, though.
Yeah, and is incredibly cheap with double Incanter's Flow being played. Does have Brain Freeze available as a cheap way to try and buy some time. Is getting so much mana back. Combustion for 1 mana. Rude Orb as well.
Okay. All playable.
All playable.
Gaby coming up on turn 6, so Flame Strike won't be able to answer this. This is an opportunity for Viper to try and press in, see what he can get off this Ruined Orb.
Already has a Cram Session in hand, but his deck is cheap. So maybe prioritizing card draw, because it's also going to be hard to corrupt the Ring Toss with the way his hand is right now. He's not going to be playing the Sage. He's not going to be playing Mask of Cthulhu anytime soon, most likely, or spending 5 mana to deal 3 damage. But picks it anyway just because Ring Toss has a lot of value in the matchup. You're able to get Counterspell to block some burn. Oh, he took too long! He could have fit in Refreshing Spawner as well.
He could have, you're right. Arguable that if he did end up getting 2 additional mana back, what would he actually play? His hand is all 4 costs or more. Oh no! Well, Evolving Missiles not being cooperative with Gaby here. I mean, he still is okay in terms of dealing with the threat, but that was definitely a very subpar result for Gaby.
Yeah, he does have the Corrupted Ring Toss, so he's got ways to spend his mana, but he can't take this damage, so he's going to have to use the Varden Dawngrasp to freeze the board and try and see if he can piece together some more burn. At any point in this game, outside of Secrets from Ring Toss, if he picks up a second Fireball, he just wins. So this is a pretty stressful situation for Viper, because there is the Fireball left in the deck for Gaby. He's used both a Pexus Blast, but also has Mask of Cthulhu, which if he can follow up a Flame Strike with it, could also be the damage that he needs, and now also has double Incanter's Flow played on his deck.
Well, the Mana Worms were hard to deal with from Viper's perspective. He's lining up into a Flame Strike. We know that. I'm pretty sure Viper's aware of that possibility as well. But, you know, he's going to see if this Gaby does have it. Not to mention the wider board he builds, the harder it is for Mask of Cthulhu to land direct damage to the face. This is a very good push coming out from Viper. But now Gaby has a very juicy, clean Flame Strike ready to go and wipe the entire board. Brutal for Viper. That's such a big swing. He was hoping that this would be his counteroffensive, and now he can't. But he does have Ring Toss, which can help give him some more longevity into the game because he is afraid of the burn. Just needs to find a counter spell. Oh boy.
Doesn't hit it. So the first one with Netherwind roll, since Oasis Ally and Rigged Fair Game were offered. The second one, I honestly don't know. None of these are particularly good in the matchup just because Rigged Fair Game usually the Mage is dealing damage to you on their turn. Probably picked it anyway just because the other two didn't really have too much benefit. And now I think he just has to play the Reckless Apprentice just to maybe try and put something in the way of potential Mask of Cthulhu.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Oh, it's Ice Barrier.
Nope.
Okay.
It is Ice Barrier. And Gaby ends up testing to see if it's counterspelled. Activates the Netherwind Portal. Gaby instantly picking the secrets so fast that I couldn't even keep up. I think I only saw one choice being Mirror Entity. Not entirely sure what else he had picked, but it could have been also Ice Barrier given the threats of the board. His hand is looking very weak. So a lot of times in that position as a Mage, you're thinking, can I get away with Rigged Fair Game in a situation, in a game where my opponent is regularly trying to deal damage? And it's not very practical.
He actually has a single card left remaining in his hand if he plays his Combustion.
Yep.
That is crazy.
I mean, it's down to the wire here. We talked about how resources are going to be an issue. Counterspell to try and stop Viper from being able to capitalize immediately off of it. I mean, Viper could test it with brain freezing his own minion. This is a way to bait the counterspell. Well done by Viper, and now he has an opportunity to play Ring Toss that's corrupted, maybe find a counterspell to stop the direct damage burn. A window of opportunity has been created from Viper's side. Counterspell also available. Oh my goodness, is Viper going to make yet another big comeback?
That would be insane. Gets to get that full mask damage in now with one Fireball in hand. Still a ways off though, because there is 19 health on Gaby's side. But now, I mean, Gaby has to ping face every turn. It doesn't get him anywhere closer because double Fireball is lethal regardless. It does get him closer if he draws a mask. But if he did he pick second, or did he pick Ice Barrier as his secret, and is Viper willing to risk that? Is the big question. Viper picks up card draw.
Oh, okay. He does go for it. He goes for it because he knows Gaby's ignoring the minion. He very clearly has a read that Gaby has direct damage like Fireball in the hand. And now, with more card draw with another Ring Toss capability, he has the option of going for yet more counterspell. Memorial Studies? Oh, he has to play the Sage here, and the Sage draws more cards, so he's going to evaluate that first.
What once was cloudy shall become clear.
Right. Now he can Devolving Missiles.
Devolving Missiles, Combustion, and I think he wants to Ring Toss because he wants to find another counterspell to stop the card draw off the top. It's very likely that Gaby just has Burn in hand since it's a card that he hasn't played. So I like that instead of going for a Pexis Blast on the 5/5 just to find the most chance to live until the next turn because that's all he needs. He has lethal from hand with Mask. He can play Mask, a Pexis Blast, and Fireball in the same turn.
Wow. He's going to do it. Gaby knows that with Fireball, it will activate the counterspell. He has to get a chance with this cram session, and it's not going to be it. Fireball was the next card, and Gaby got so close to be able to win that mirror, and Viper takes the first game of the series. Deep breaths being taken, because he knows once more it was an unlikely scenario at the very get-go, but as time went on with some really solid play and of course playing to the deck outs, that's what Mage wants to do. Viper able to withstand the pressure and bring it back. The early game was largely dictated by the fact that Gaby was pretty aggressive, able to get that damage and put Viper at that damage threshold, but just coming up a little bit short. Despite the fact that Viper's aggression for turnaround felt like it was going to fall dead in the water, Gaby just ran completely out of gas. And we talk and highlight about the importance of card draw. Look at the difference in decks on the right side of the screen. 4 cards for Viper remaining, 13 for Gaby. That tells you everything you need to know about how that mid game went for those players.
And, you know, the early game was slightly messy for Viper. He got through it, right? But it looked like there were some opportunities, like him running out of time, having to throw out the Devolving Missiles and not really taking much power off the board. But the way he sequenced it in the later portions of the game, specifically holding off on a Pexis Blast on a 5/5, exact mana utilization, recognizing that Gaby probably has Burn in hand and he needs the chance at disruption with the counterspell. Because if he hadn't done that, if he had Pexis Blast instead, he would have died because he wouldn't have had counterspell up. Gaby would have drawn Fireball, Cram Session, then Fireball again for lethal. So well done at the end for Viper, recognizing that he just needed to protect his life total. And he did exactly that. And Mage Mirrors have been deciding a lot of matches, especially when you're in an actual 120 for 120 card mirror matchup. If you're winning deck versus deck, right? Mage versus Mage, Rogue versus Rogue, whatever, it puts you at a huge advantage. And now Viper going to move to the Miracle Rogue, single Pen Flinger, Miracle Rogue. And I mean, obviously this deck has been on fire for both players since they're in the finals. Throughout the tournament, I've been praising the players that brought the animated broomstick. But seeing the Penflinger in action, how you have yet another card in your deck that can activate your own Octobot and then bounce back and still be able to fight for board, it's been pretty crucial in a lot of their wins. So I may have to eat my words and say that Penflinger's just better.
It could be. And it might be impactful in other matchups, but against Mage, Penflinger doesn't seem to nearly have as much consistency because Mage isn't really focused on playing that many minions. We shall see, though. Gaby, full mulligan, looking for something better. Viper, I mean, Swindle is something that you can consider keeping. Everything else feels like it's not that impactful right now. Much better to pick those up later, or at least if you have cards that you know you want to combo with. The big important thing with these rogue versus mages, we've talked about timing, and Viper has some of the best out there, as he is very, very strong at recognizing when he can go for these giant swing turns. Doesn't even keep up the Swindle, wants to ensure that he has the ability to go for powerful plays as soon as he's able to. And Gaby picks up Incanter's Flow with Font of Power. That's a really good opening hand here.
Man.
Wow. I mean, he's got very good stuff overall, and I think if you look at how Viper's hand is right now, he did pick up the Foxy Fraud, which was nice, but he doesn't have anything to combo with. I feel like it's not that great. And now Incanter's Flow.
His hand is gross.
Back. Yeah, we're going to see
man.
the exact same thing, TJ, that we've been talking about, which is the Mages get the first 2 wins of the series.
Yeah. Maybe to, backtrack and re-answer your question from earlier. Absolutely, Dan. Mage is the best deck. It was the best bring to the field. It just seems like they're trading wins back and forth with Mage at the beginning of the series. I guess it would happen with Priest as well if they were left up, just judging by what we've seen when it has been left up. A little bit of a tough decision from Viper here, whether to go with Octobot or Cult Neophyte. Going into 3 mana obviously blocks Arcane Intellect and just the ability to remove. But I really like it to either, 1, block the 4 mana turn with Refreshing Spring Water, or after you build a board to try and protect it a little bit with that. But this hand is insane. And also gets the Imprisoned Phoenix, gets to load up some spell damage. If this Refreshing Spring Water hits a 0 mana cram session, then he's just going to pop off in a couple turns. Yeah. He's going to draw through pretty much his entire deck. Yeah.
Yes. If you think about, tempo matchups, a lot of times being dictated by how many mana crystals you can spend, it's a very simplistic and not a very good rule of thumb to always measure everything, but it can be a way to help guide what you're trying to do. Those who squeeze out very mana-efficient plays regularly will have an advantage over those who do not. And every single turn, Gaby can play 2, 4, 6, maybe even up to 10 mana crystals more than Viper can. It's going to be very gross if Gaby hits a cram session that can continue to draw with that Imprisoned Phoenix and just wipe out Viper. I mean, we've seen it where sometimes they just kill them on like turn 6 or 7 just because they keep drawing 2 mana Fireballs, 3 mana Pexus Blast, a Massacre Cthulhu to finish it all off. It's going to be very difficult for Viper to fight back. But he has his own mana discounts too. It's not like he is sitting dead in the water. Viper does have the ability to disrupt, and he's going to make it sting a little bit. This is excellent timing from Viper, recognizing that Refreshing Spring Water is going to be a card that if he's holding it, it's not going to be easy for him to play.
Yeah, I like the play. Flinger also doesn't have as much value.
Oh my.
What?
Brutal. I mean, this this is looking like one of those games. I mean, Gaby is just ripping off the top of his deck. And when you draw like this and you're not making mistakes, I mean, it's a recipe for success. Gaby's not really threatened by that Penflinger, can't really go face.
Yeah.
Viper stuck on a Secret Passage turn.
Yep. Gets the Penflinger back. That's about it. But, I mean, turn 4, he's looking for Kazakis. There's not much room for field contact. Vanessa Van Cleef to a Combustion.
Sure. I mean, helps him deal with the Phoenix.
Sure, but it's just not what you want to be doing in the matchup. And even look at the hand post Secret Passage. He's got a whole lot of nothing to do. You know, obviously this is going to be made better by a field contact draw, but Penflinger and Prize Plunder usually want to use to contest the board, but there's not really going to be a board from Gaby to contest.
Oh my goodness. 4 damage from the Ruined Orb.
Geez.
Discover a spell. Another Apexis Blast. 7 damage from the Apexis Blast that was drawn. Now going to summon a 5 mana cost minion. And then Fireball. Viper was at 30 health about 3 seconds ago. Now is staring at potential death.
Potential death. I feel like this is imminent death, to be honest. Even with a good hand, Viper would have had trouble in this game, I feel. But with this type of hand that he's working with right now, I just... if he can maybe survive to be able to coin Alex his own face, then, you know, maybe we have a game, but he hits card draw again. It still costs 2 mana, even with the Cold Neophyte being played.
Right. It's just efficient still.
Yep.
More studies of spell damage. And with the cheap spell damage minion like Astromancer Solarian, next turn, he has the ability to squeeze out the Apexis Blast. Goes for a Cram Session. I realized he didn't actually have enough mana to go for lethal next turn. So Gaby, that prioritizing the card draw, see if he can pick it up. Okay. TJ, I mean, Viper's getting kind of close to an opportunity to maybe sneak one over Gaby. Can he do this?
He can get a Ruined Orb here from the Vanessa Van Cleef. And then he's not really going to have enough mana to do anything. I don't think there's anything for 1 that he could really use to disrupt any burn from Gaby. But if he survives one more turn, like we said, he can coin the Alex. Potion?
All right.
Okay. If Alex lives, then he can potion it in Alex again.
Well, he has the ability to Shadow Step his Tenwu preemptively here, so he can coin next turn, play the Alexstrasza Tenwu, and have Alexstrasza for the following turn with Potion. So I like that. Does he want a Tenwu, Shadow Step the Tenwu, or is he going to go for the ultimate pressure play to try and see if he can finish this game right here? Gaby has 2 Cram Sessions.
Oh, jeez. 1 is 0 mana.
Finish it.
Mask?
2
Double mask?
Trying to clear the board.
Yeah, the problem with Shadow Stepping the Tenwu is like you can't do it all in 1 turn. Because even if you Tenwu the Alex back to hand, it'll still be full cost, and you'd be going into the following turn. So you'd be going into an 8 mana turn, and then you wouldn't even be able to play the Alex again.
Right, it was for turn 9, so the Shadow Step was to play Tenwu. You coin Alexstrasza yourself, then play a 0 mana Tenwu and bounce back Alexstrasza. Then the following turn, you Alexstrasza Potion for Alexstrasza.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't be able to Alexstrasza because it only costs 1 for that turn, and it would be full cost, so it would be 9.
Right.
And then you wouldn't be able to play it the next turn.
Yes. So
why? He's just hoping that he has no bird. He's setting up for 2 turn.
He got close, TJ. I was thinking that there was a possibility, but he can't do that. And Gaby is going to strike back. So that's going to be game number 2. And, I mean, at this point, we saw the Mages trade games. It was a tough spot from Viper. You know, caster, lethal, right? The opportunity to maybe squeeze out additional mana they didn't have. He was desperate to find something, but I agree with that, right? Like going for an Alexstrasza aggressively, recognizing that the only way that you can get it was to try and be very aggressive onto the board. But, you know, there's no stopping the momentum. The momentum that even shifted so fast that Gaby's headphones fell off from that head whip, recognizing the second Incanter's flow. I mean, this kid's going so fast with this Mage deck, and Viper couldn't do anything to stop it.
Yeah, and talking about just at the end there, Viper Alexing Gaby instead of his own face. It makes sense, right? Because even if you Alex your own face, you're not progressing your own game plan. Gaby has so many cards. At that point, he could just, kind of freeze the Alexstrasza or do whatever and then still manage to find the burn because he had double mask and fireball and a Pexus Blast left in the deck. So it's really difficult to win from that position, and he's saying, all right, you have 13 cards or 14 cards left in your deck. It's a possibility that all of your burn is at the bottom, and that's a higher likelihood for me to win than me Alexing my own face and playing this passive game plan. So I like how Viper just took the risk. He kind of threw it out there. He knew that he was probably dead, but I like the try nonetheless. And now he moves to Rush Warrior, which surprisingly a very difficult deck to play. I think when players first got their hands on it, they were like, oh, this is pretty cool. You just play rush minions, play a big thing every turn, and, fight for board. But when to hold on to resources, when to play out things, and when to hoard things for conditioning, and the order that you play things, how to combo Parade Leader and Playmaker with the rush minions can be a pretty difficult task. And I do think that one false move can force a loss on this deck, because I do think that out of the decks in these players' lineup, Mage, Rogue, Priest, the Rush Warrior is kind of the odd man out, where I don't think it's quite at the power level of the other decks. And I think that if we can see a player come out on top in like a Rush Warrior mirror matchup, that's going to be a big deal. Or just getting across the line with the Rush Warrior in general.
Rush Warrior really much punctuated by the power of the top end of getting extra damage to the Troublemaker and Alexstrasza, but the main meat of it is being able to buff your hand through conditioning and Overlord Runthok. Now, we look at a lot of the Rush Warrior power, but, one thing that's been very pleasantly surprising to see the inclusion of ETC, God of Metal, to get a little bit extra rush damage to see if you can get over the hump. And they've been super valuable in clutching the situations for even both of these players. Being able to get the win in situations where it looked like they needed a little bit extra and they were just short. And it's been very clutch. I'm thinking about the games from Viper, where he had a situation where he was completely dead if he didn't have the ETC and the exact mana for that lethal. So I'm looking forward to seeing more Rush Warrior. I think it's very much proved itself as being a top candidate for a good tournament deck. I think people have been down on it in ladder in general because it just hasn't really shown as much staying power against Paladin as people would like. But it's still a very solid deck, and many people have had success with it. In my opinion, I think Warrior was the big X factor in a lot of lineups that we saw made it to the top 16.
Yeah, it did start to kind of pull away. At the beginning of the tournament, I honestly thought that looking at the field control Warrior, the few players that brought it would have more success with the ability to ban Priest and having good matchups otherwise. But I just don't think the control Warrior stood up well enough against Mage, or at least as well as they thought it would. And that's why it kind of faltered a little bit. And we saw like one in top 16, and that was it. But now getting into the mirror matchup, Gaby has double bumper car with conditioning, so has the ability to have a big burst of power in the mid game. Viper does have the control of the board at the moment, but control of the board in a Rush Warrior mirror doesn't mean all that much, because it can swing incredibly quickly the other way. But if you can stick some meaningful damage, then that lets you get to the point where the weapons from Imprisoned Gnarg and Sword Eater plus Alexstrasza, or ETC, like you talked about before we got into this match, can end things. So yeah, Gaby has to be mindful of how much damage he's taking early, and just how greedy he wants to get with his conditioning in hand.
Well, we're not there yet. I mean, I guess he could if he wanted to use the conditioning right now to strike back and answer the board. But can he go even further with his tempo swing that's eventually going to come out with the conditioning and these powerful rushers? If he uses the Sword Eater this turn, I mean, that was one of the first plays that I thought of. You could also use Parade Leader and the Rushers to answer right now and wait till the second round of bumper cars and the riders to buff up with conditioning. There's a couple of different lines that you can take here, all with really important ramifications on how the mid game will play out. And so Gaby seems to prioritize removing the Parade Leader right now and dealing with the immediate threats. And I can get behind that here.
Yeah, it is a good amount of resources, though. Like you said, doesn't want to fall too far behind. Viper kind of just autopiloting a little bit, which is uncharacteristic of him as a player. Usually quite mindful of even pretty simple turns. But, ooh, Blademaster Samuro buffed with the stage dive. That is a good pickup because that is a definitive comeback tool in the matchup and allows Gaby to be a little bit greedier with now double conditioning in hand. Oh.
Okay, well, conditioning right on time for Viper to add more stats onto the board. And Gaby's like really hoping that he overextends. Like, you want to play things like a buffed Crab Rider because I got the Blademaster Samuro ready to go. I mean, this is an opportunity for Gaby to go for a decisive swing. He was waiting for it, biding his time. Viper setting it up. Gaby, with that Blademaster Samuro getting buffed, has the 5 attack ready to go with the conditioning. But not exactly the wipe that I think he was hoping for. I mean, still a good wipe.
Well, yeah, Gaby was really just hoping for not Crab Rider in that instance because he had conditioning plus Blademaster Samuro. Crab Rider would have been at 6 health, so it wouldn't have been cleared off. And he's at 16, so that Crab Rider would have already had 3 attack, could have attacked for 6. He had another weapon, so Gaby would have been, even after playing the Blademaster Samuro, down to just 7 health on the next turn, which is not a great place to be. Because a couple weapon swings plus Alexstrasza, even if you're armoring up every turn, which you don't want to be doing because it means you're not fighting for board as aggressively, would have been the answer. So he is happy now that it was just a measly bumper cars.
You're correct, TJ. At that point, miscounting by 1 in a couple different areas, you're entirely correct. That Crab Rider would have been just barely out of the range, finds an opportunity to crash into this Sword Eater and take a very commanding board lead with the Warsong Challenger now buffed as well. Gaby flinging onto the board, and now Viper has to respond. Does have his own buffed up Samuro as well, trying to pave the way before his Troublemaker hits the board. And can also think about how he wants to utilize his athletic studies at the end of the turn, perhaps, to see if it changes what he wants to do for the future turns. But I have to imagine that he's still eyeing this Troublemaker and thinking about what he wants to do next turn.
This is an interesting decision. Kargath puts a giant Rushman in your deck in the form of Kargath Prime. Viper doesn't necessarily need the armor right now, but that could change quickly, right? Or go for probably Tent Trasher, just because it's usually the same cost as Warsong Outrider, just 1 extra health. But if he really feels like he needs to squeeze in some extra mana, that could go Warsong Outrider just for the most efficient way to clear. But judging by his hand, it looks like he will have some mana available. Turn 8 is most likely going to be Troublemaker unless Gaby sets up a board that it doesn't look particularly good against. I'm actually not sure because there's different reasons to take each one, but ends up going with Kargath just to have that ability to have the Kargath Prime come to the hand at some point in the game.
Yeah, I like Kargath because it has even more potential. If you pick up Playmaker, it can summon 2 Kargath Blade Fists and find a way to respond to your opponent's board. The 10th Trasher, it's a very solid card. There's nothing wrong with picking it up. However, I just feel like there's just less potential the way that Viper can see this game going longer. Because we have seen Frenzy Warriors, or rather Rush Warriors, battle back and forth and trade resources. Then it comes down for pound how strong your cards are. So I think that's what was on Viper's mind. He picks up a stage dive, and this is a very intimidating board. He should still be alive even if he plays Troublemaker and it doesn't die immediately. But it feels like one of these situations where Viper has to be careful. If he ends up committing Troublemaker and he falls behind on board, then it might not matter if he has Kargoth, Blade Fist, and Darkmoon Rider afterwards.
Yeah, I think he has to deviate from the Troublemaker turn because the breakpoints just aren't good enough. Even if if he hits any of these minions, unless he's hitting both, well, he could Darkmoon Rider and then trade both Playmaster Samuro and the Darkmoon Rider and kill this off. And then if he gets some more face damage or kills the 5/5, he wants one of two things. He wants them both to go in the same place. Nope.
Yeah. And Playmaker now with the double Dr. Krasinov that's been mega buffed. Huge damage, huge pressure coming out from Gaby to try and end this game. And now Viper is on a draw to just live. Athletic Studies to start things off. Or rather, he has a stage dive to draw as well as Athletic Studies.
Even with the buffer car, I don't think that's enough. Rusty Raider and Rakara could both come out and double trade, but then I think he's dead to the Krasinov. Or the weapon, whichever way he decides to. He can't kill every minion.
What now?
No, he can't. Rusty Raider would cost 4 Rakara. So I think the Rusty Raider is a 5/8. It could kill off the Krasinov.
Yeah, but then he kills off one other minion with Okara, and then he still leaves 9 power on board, whichever way he does it, right? He leaves the Playmaker up and the weapon swing. I was thinking maybe he could leave value trade with the Rusty Raider, leave a minion up, but then the weapon hits, and the Rakara's not strong enough to kill the Krasinov and Gaby. That was a crazy rush warrior mirror because it felt like Viper was ahead, and all it took was just one turn for Gaby to swing it. And honestly, with both players having Blade Master Samuro, the player that's not the aggressor, right, in that situation, since Viper had the tempo advantage, he was the aggressor, comes out on top because they get a bigger swing. They sweep up more minions with Blade Master Samuro and swing the game back. So a nicely played game from Gaby, and was able to, like we said, get a little greedy with the conditionings and have it pay off big time.
Absolutely. He has the 2 of conditioning, and all you gotta do is be patient. You wait, you wait, you wait, and right when he gives you the opportunity, the double, you stand onto the board, swing, and end the game right there. I mean, just look at this power turn with the Dr. Krasinov and being able to have the Playmaker come out, summon an extra copy, wipe Troublemaker, push for the lethal. And Gaby is now on tournament point. 1 game away from being able to claim the Master Tour Orgrimmar Championship and win $25,000. Viper right behind him, but needs to find a way to get the win. We've been talking about the mirrors. It's been about the mirrors when these lineups go head-to-head. And we might see another one coming up. But it depends on how Viper really wants to play his matchups. It does not really tell you one way or the other what's going to happen because he needs to win with both the decks. For now, we're going to go to Gaby. He does have a bad matchup with the Warrior on the other side with Viper's lineup, and that Warrior still up. But he does get 2 chances, and it's not an unwinnable matchup even if he goes up against Warrior here.
Yeah, I don't think there's really anything that's an unwinnable matchup for Miracle Rogue in the current metagame. They're just quite a consistent deck and can find game plans to beat pretty much any archetype, which is cool, and it's why it's had so much staying power, despite going through, many evolutions for the deck, having to deal with balance changes to both Penflinger and Jandis Barov. And even since then, right, the addition of Tenwu and Alexstrasza the Lifebinder a few weeks ago. Now people are putting in Broomsticks. There's even people putting in Broomsticks and then Sinister Strikes and Ethereal Augmarches and going for super burst damage rogue. It's pretty cool to see that. And Rush Warrior is probably its worst matchup, at least its worst matchup out of the decks that are common in the field. So we'll see how things pan out. It would be kind of fitting for the finals to come down to a Miracle Rogue mirror because it does feel like Miracle Rogue has kind of defined the tournament, even though Priest is considered the best deck. It's getting banned the most. We've talked about Mage so much. Oftentimes it comes down to rogues getting wins in series that are deciding things. So I hope that we get to go to that Game 5. Don't want any bias to show because I like both these players equally. But just for excitement factor in maximum Hearthstone, Dan.
Maximum Hearthstone. We're getting that. Game number 4 about to start. Viper not liking the hand. Gonna go full mulligan. Gaby, on the other hand, has some interesting choices. I like Mankrik always, just one of these really powerful cards you can play on 3. I have seen some players feel like they can keep Shadow Step as well, so this is exactly what Gaby ends up doing, and it opens up a lot of potential into the hand, depending on what he's drawing, though. One of the things that it does feel like when you're on the rogue side is you're on borrowed time. The longer, the game ends up going, assuming even if you're able to mass a bunch of resources, Warrior will eventually rack up these really powerful boards, and you just have so much to answer that it feels like the Warrior, unless you rush them down, has that really powerful inevitability. The caveat, of course, is if Rogue is able to find some combo damage in the late game. But that's just some of the experience that we've been seeing throughout the entire weekend. And Gaby has been really good about pressuring when he feels like he has that opportunity to do so, even to the point where I think he's wondering if he wants to put something on the board right now.
Yeah. That one's tough because any of the 2-mana rushers deal with the Guardian Hog Merchant pretty easily. And I don't think you want to use coin, especially with how this hand is. Viper also had a very interesting decision last turn of Blademaster Samuro plus or bumper cars. He risked not having a play on turn 2 if he didn't go bumper cars, but realized that the Blademaster Samuro gave him the biggest ability to clear those mid-game wide board states that Rogue almost always has once they get to the point that they are playing the field contacts and trying to play those battle cries. There's a bunch of 3/2s, which, Blademaster Samuro with a conditioning or parade leader buff can cut through quite easily.
Yeah, it's all true, and it's something to keep in mind as we see what is the athletic studies peak. Okay, so Rokara, very high value if you're able to keep it alive. Fleetfoot, Pearl Tusk, just a very nice generic big stat minion. You talk about overwhelming rogue with pile of stats. That's definitely a great way to do it. Okay.
Yeah. Just feel like it's got to be Rokara there. Opens up some opportunities next turn. Can go Playmaker in Rokara. Which not really the best considering it doesn't have high stats to trade into things. Usually Rokara is better when you already have a board or when you're comboing it with other rush minions, but also has the ability to just go Tent Trasher and swing with the weapon that he's going to get from Imprisoned Gennaric, which would deal with this board pretty effectively.
Yep, looks good to me. Tent Thrasher is very strong, ends up becoming 2 mana this turn, and can even play some other cards with it. Stage Dive comes into the hand.
Yeah, he does have double athletic studies buff right now, which means that all these rushmans are +2 in cost, so he won't be able to play like Rokara with it, but he could play Stage Dive alongside it and still start to set up for some big minions. I mean, he still has a natural Blademaster Samuro in his deck, so could still hit that off the Stage Dive. Doesn't. Hits another Tent Trasher.
That's right. No
big
tents
stuff.
will be pitched today in the grand finals.
Oh.
Field contact.
Oh.
Prize Plunderer. Here we go. Starting big combos. And we need this from Rogue in order to be competitive in this game. Gaby trying to go off and to capitalize on the turns before Viper starts hitting full power. He knows that conditioning is going to be a threat in the next turn onwards. Has another hand where he could potentially reload with this second field contact. For now, he's going to stop here. Viper does not have the conditioning, but he has ways to ramp up his power as well. The only annoying thing is that this field contact needs to die. So instead of playing his Ringmaster Watley, he plays the Samuro to try to answer the board. A very clean sweep back over to Gaby.
Now the question is, does he want to pop off with the second field contact? He does have a Shadow Step, but can really only play 1 minion alongside with it and then Shadow Step. Could go for like double Wand Thief and try and find like Brain Freeze to keep things going. But I think that it's just better to hold on to field contact and try and assemble a little bit more resources, a little bit more mana. There is the Brain Freeze. So that is most certainly the pick, I'd imagine, unless he wants to bank more mana this turn with Contra Mana Biscuit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking.
All right.
Too. So he has more field contact explosiveness, right? He's racking up his swing turn. And that's kind of what the meta has become, and that's what really has defined a lot of these decks. The Mage, the Rogue, the Warrior, they all have one thing in common, which is they're really trying to capitalize off of having a powerful hand impacted by a sweeping effect, whether it's, Incanter's Flow discounting a bunch of stuff, conditioning to buff your entire hand, Efficient Octobot with field contact to draw your entire deck. These are super powerful effects. And then when you compound it with the fact that you can get ahead like the way Viper is, by leveraging Playmaker and Rakara, it's one of my favorite combos in the deck. TJ, not a huge fan of saying that he thinks that there could be better stuff, which I agree. But it's really fun when you get it to stick and you're able to summon multiple Rakaras because you get the double buff if it survives an attack, as you just saw.
Yeah, brings the first Rakara up to a 4/4. Dimension Samurai with 3/5 now, very difficult to deal with. And Gaby picks up Wicked Stab, which can be used to try and clean up the board, but it's not what he wanted. He wanted more stuff for the field contact, and he's going to get a Rakara himself, but he's still limited on mana.
Oof.
Can go for Secret Passage?
Can. I was thinking Shadow Step as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about the Rakara, it's the fact that he just needs to draw something else now.
Yeah, but he needs to find a way to remove the board, is what's happening. So he's going to be left with 2 mana. So not enough to play an efficient Octobot and activate it. Oh, Alex Rosen, not good. Wicked Stab, I mean, that's something. Olgra, oh no, that's so expensive.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like all of his meaty minions.
Yeah, it's that interaction because I think Secret Passage, if I recall correctly, the words is replace as opposed to draw, right? So you don't actually get the effect off of Olgra, and you don't get that 3/10 on board. Viper has stuck a Playmaker. I repeat, Viper has stuck a Playmaker onto the board.
And a Rakara.
It is going to be very dangerous for Gaby moving forward. He was unable to clear a significant amount of the threats. He concedes. We're going to Game 5 to find out who will be the Master Sword Orgrimmar champion. Viper has now brought it back to a Rogue mirror. And we talked all weekend long about how the match will be determined by the mirrors, who's able to get the edge. One last Rogue versus Rogue to determine it all.
Yeah, I don't blame Gaby for conceding with that hand. He had very little comeback potential. That was his last field contact that was just stranded on board, going to be killed off. Had really nothing in his hand to fight back except for a Wicked Stab, but the board was going to get too big with all the attacks and Playmaker and Rakara sticking on board. And at that point, you kind of want to save your mental fortitude, right? Because you know that you're very likely to lose that game and you got one more game left. So even though maybe a little bit of a rougher early start for Viper, he didn't really get anything going up until that Playmaker Rakara turn. But that's all it takes, right? As soon as you get that big board, Rogue struggles to deal with it because their ability to remove is limited when they have not that much mana to work with, especially when you have that much health and stats and must-kill minions on the board. So Rogue Mirror decided all, and it is a true mirror match. 30 for 30 cards.
That's right.
As 120 for 120 from the get-go of the series. And, I knew it was going to come down to a mirror matchup. But having it be Rogue is incredibly fitting.
That's right. I mean, we talk about Rogue's performance and why it is one of the classes uniquely positioned to do very well in the metagame at the beginning of the weekend, and it's really come true. It's shown off what it can do against some of the most prominent decks like Mage and Paladin. Even shows it has a fighting chance against Warrior. Maybe not in that previous game, but it does have these situations where maybe it's not as awful as the data makes it seem. Rogue can actually have a fighting chance if you're able to get a little bit lucky, but also play very tight. And so with that Rogue mirror determining it all, it comes down to this one final game. 50% split down the middle in terms of who is favored. An established EU veteran in the form of a world finalist runner-up in Viper from 2019 up against the second coming of another wave of youth in 2021 from France. It's Gaby. Who's going to take it? Full mulligans across the board, TJ.
Oh, and Gaby has an Octobot. He doesn't have the best follow-up to Octobot, but he does have Penflinger, which can activate it himself. Zero Mana Secret Passage also can be quite useful, and he still has a draw off the top at least to try and hit, say, field contact to really get the ball rolling. Viper, no Octobot, but does have the field contact already, and a Foxy Fraud, so can kind of play for tempo. Oh, Gaby is honed in.
Yes, he is dialed in. There's no room for error at this point. Rogue versus Rogue has always been, in these tempo-based mirrors, balanced on a nice edge. It is so easy for things to get way out of control because you didn't collect enough value, because you didn't draw that one extra card, because you took one extra damage. And it might end up becoming that case here. There's a lot of potential in both players' hands. But with Gaby having that early efficient Octobot puts him already at a pretty significant advantage. We saw what other players tried to do against Viper in the semifinals, being able to weave in the efficient Octobot as Floki played a full 7-mana minion board, or 7 minion board on turn 4, with Jandis Baroff getting double discounted and almost killed Viper by turn 5. That's how crazy fast it can get when you have an efficient Octobot leading the way on turn 2.
Oh, just dagger. There was no real way for him to make a meaningful impact on the board, right? There was some fancy stuff he could have done. Like, I'm talking really fancy and way over the top, like Foxy Fraud, Wand Thief. And then if you hit Flurry, you can Flurry coin to Prize Plunder to not give him the efficient Octobot, but that is excessive. And he's staying to Gaby, basically forcing him to have an answer of his own. And now the question is, can Gaby get greedy? You saw Viper didn't have a way to deal with this at first and didn't have a way to play for tempo at first. But it looks like he is just going to take the discount now. Some premium cards discounted. And I wonder if he's just going to go all in with like Tenwu here.
Tenwu, I mean, nothing would be playable after that. I guess, I mean, he could play his other cards here. But, you know, it's like you said, favoring that tempo, getting onto the board. Now Viper has to answer it with a 1 mana increase on all of his spells. He finds an efficient Octobot with a very good hand to back it up, TJ.
Yeah, but there's still the question of how does he go about this, right? Does he just efficient Octobot and play Wand Thief and just get the discount that way? Does he go efficient Octobot and then just Prize Plunder his own efficient Octobot and try and go for a massive swing next turn with field contact, Foxy Fraud, Wand Thief, Brain Freeze?
So many options.
I think it may be in his mind such an aggressive stance to just be immediately met with disarming that aggression. He has the Brain Freeze and the Prize Plunder, and I like it. I mean, a full board wipe while you're able to take 1 damage and you're still up in the card resources because you know you have Secret Passage and Wand Thief. I think Viper, all he's doing right now is hoping that Gaby doesn't have something like Field Contact to refill his hand, which he does pick up. And so now Gaby can set that up and have an opportunity to refill his hand. This is a situation where it could easily fizzle out. We've seen it so many times where it feels anticlimactic because Rogue just gasses out. It's called Miracle Rogue for a reason. There's a lot of cheap cards that sometimes don't link to other cards, but with field contact and secret passage being 0, Gaby does have an opportunity to bring this back despite the efficient Octobot not getting a significant mana discount beyond 1 card.
Oh, these hands are like, it feels like they're just mirroring each other. Viper has the coin, so obviously has 1 more card, but if you subtract the Wand Thief, the 4 other cards, Octobot, Brain Freeze, Field Contact, Secret Passage, is exactly what Gaby had last turn, which is kind of crazy. And Viper just going to go off right now with the Field Contact number 1. It's Conjure Mana Biscuit, Cone of Cold, Refreshing Spring Water. I doubt it's Cone of Cold. Has Secret Passage, so doesn't necessarily need Spring Water. We saw Gaby try and make use of Conjure Mana Biscuit to try and cheat even more mana. But because he has his Field Contact already on board and no way to pick it, oh wow, he does pick Cone of Cold. I guess it does buy him a full turn.
Yeah, I think at this point, he might need to prioritize whether or not he can find a way to stall out in case Gaby goes for a very big tempo swing. But I like it. You know, freeze is something that can help give him that extra turn if he needs. And Gaby is back in the same position he was previously, where he needs to find something good off the top, and that wasn't it. The Alexstrasza, better later on. Damn, this is a little bit too expensive, but he finds a swindle. All right.
Okay.
Wand Thief can pick off the field contact. Can also Shadow Step the Wand Thief to get it ready for next turn. The stage is set. Gaby has that opportunity to pop off next turn with that field contact or bursting onto the board. Viper, I mean, he's still in the middle of preparation phase here.
So many options.
Viper deep into tank, thinking about what he can really set up here. Efficient Octobot has the ability to be the combo enabler, just starting off and finding what he can get with Wand Thief. He does have Shadow Step available through the Vanessa Van Cleef, which is quite interesting. Vanessa Van Cleef Shadow Step interaction is actually quite hilarious because, as you know, it can really chain things and make some really wonky things happen. But Viper, more importantly, is thinking about the Mage spells that he can pick up here. Flurry, he has Freeze already. Combustion is ways to answer the board. Deep Freeze is a little bit too expensive. And, you know, could end up memeing a lot. This specific interaction is quite funny. The Vanessa Van Cleef and the Shadow Step could theoretically infinite chain.
Looks like a complete hold. You can see his facial expression there at the end. He's just like, nah.
Wicked Stab stops the discount. And now, I mean, Gaby's very much prepared for a big swing. If there's one thing that has been a hallmark of Gaby's play, even just today, if you've only been able to watch the top 8, it is his patience. He has been very good about waiting for the opportune times to try and capitalize perfectly on a big swing turn, because that is what this deck is reliant upon. In the meantime, he's just hoping that Viper doesn't have the kind of pressure and aggression that could really ruin things. And Viper still doesn't have that mana discount. Is actually a big deal because Secret Passage can't dig Jandis, for example, to place onto the board and threaten Gaby. Instead, he has to think about if there's any merit to doing any other play. For example, he could Shadow Step, play his own Mankrik.
And yeah, Shadow Step plays on Mankrik and then Combustion to kill off the Mankrik on the other side.
I like that. As a Van Cleef really getting a lot of value here. Ooh, committing onto a board, holding onto the Combustion, instead trying to make a very sturdy board. And it incidentally plays around that Flame Strike as well, but that's not going to stop it from the dagger attack and that Flame Strike. And Viper, once more, is going to get wiped by Giant AoE. Has the Secret Passage ready to go. A second Man-Crick, but he won't be able to be mana efficient, so I think from Viper's perspective, he has to go for his Secret Passage. 4 cards in his deck.
Okay, Foxy Fraud and Swindle.
Huge.
And Tenwu, honestly, if he picks up another combo card, could just go for the same thing again. Doesn't find any value, though.
Doesn't find the value, but he could just end up playing these cards anyways. Yeah. Curious if he feels the need to Shadow Step as well. 16 life, that is dangerously close to where Viper can get to end this game if he finds Alexstrasza in the next few turns. That life lead is a significant deal, and now the time has arrived. Gaby's been biting for quite a few turns now. Wand Thief with the field contact to try and see if he can pick up his hand resource count, and it's going to start exploding soon. But first, a little detour to find out what's going on in Mage Land as he picks up that devolving missiles, and he's going to follow with the Guardian Arc Merchant.
Efficient Octobot as well. Doesn't really matter too much in this hand. He's already used Tenwu, so can't go for any crazy Alexstrasza combos. Arcane Intellect, that's more card draw. Another Wand Thief. He's going to draw his whole deck.
Oh? Ice Barrier. Finds Kazakis. Now he's got a ton of power cards in his hand. He still wants to deal with Tenwu, and he also wants to make sure that he just doesn't die, which is a really important thing to factor when you know Viper's holding 2 Mage cards. There's 2 mysterious Mage cards that Gaby's not aware of right now. He knows that they are Mage cards discovered off the Wand Thief, and he's gonna go for a Greater Golem. Oh, Orgrimmar comes out! Magic number's 10. Gaby takes off his headset. He's waiting to see if that ends up being a deciding factor of whether or not he's alive or if the game, the tournament, is over.
Oh, this is going to get real close. Viper, not much juice in the hand. It's a lot of ways to clear the board. But he does have a way to kind of build a board himself at the same time. Just the Prize Plunder and Shadow Step, and I mean just Kona Cold and Combustion almost is a way to pretty much get this board quite clean. I think he's trying to find a way to maybe fit in like a Man-Crick as well, but I'm not seeing it. I mean, if he wants this Tenwu to hit phase, keep in mind that Viper does not have any Wicked Stabs left. He used 1 to clear Man-Crick, and then 1 was cast to face during the Secret Passage turn. So his burst is limited to just another Ogre in the deck from a Man-Crick, and then Alexstrasza.
That's right. Has to play Penflinger and the Combustion if he wants to fully clear the board. Oh, he can actually commit the Prize Plunder instead. Viper waits to the very last second. Looks like he got it off. Loading up 11 power on board. That is enough for lethal. Gaby has to respond to this. He does have Ice Barrier ready to go. He does have that Greater Golem. But in terms of the AoE, the tables have turned. Gaby played that Flame Strike. Viper wasn't expecting it. And with 2 forms of area effect wiping Gaby's board, I mean, he has to play this Greater Golem and hope that he's able to survive. He does pick off 1 of the minions. That's a big amount of lifesteal swing. Still not out of the woods just yet. He's at 16. He has 8 power on the board. Alexstrasza costs 9 mana. Gaby has to be mindful of that, which makes him probably think that he has to play Prize Plunder, potentially even that Ice Barrier right now.
Yeah, if he plays Ice Barrier, Prize Plunder, he can take off the 3-2, leave 5 on the board, still be quite healthy. Even if he just takes off the 3-2 in general, he knows the reach from Viper is quite limited. And he just really needs to survive a turn, right? Because Viper is going to have to sink damage into this Lifesteal Golem because he can't afford with, you know, the kind of resources that he has in hand. To really go for it. Jandis, maybe?
Hey, wait. Jandis Barov. What comes out of the summoning Raz Frost Whisperer? And Talon Fordring, which draws Alex Straza.
Oh!
And now Viper can pretty much wipe the board, I think. Still,
yeah, he can.
Matt's the main quick trades. He has the pen flinger, and he has. I don't know if he wants to use Shadow Step here.
Well, he can Shadow Step the Prize Plunder, so he's played 1 card. This would be 2. Shadow Step would be 3. The second pen flinger will be 4. So not quite an... Oh, yeah, and he can deal 4 to the Lifesteal Golem, and then the Raz will clean it up. So that's a clear on everything except for the Octobot, but it's going to give Octobot activation.
Well, I think that's not your concern nearly as much as keeping your opponent's life total in check, because you know that with Talon Fordring, you can have Alex draws in the following turn. So I think that's okay.
Yeah. Putting it into the Octobot just makes sense. And now, Prize Plunder, 4 damage to the Golem. Pretty much a full board sweep. Gaby's working with a cheap hand. And Prize Plunder was the last card played as well for Vanessa Van Cleef, but at this point, I don't think it matters. He doesn't have a way to clear off this board unless this is like a miracle Jandis and Devolving Missile. This is Ice Barrier to buy him time, but if he kills the Talon Fordring, it draws the Alex, and that's 8 more damage that he has to worry about. Okay, Olgra.
Okay, he has Vanessa Van Cleef to draw a Prize Plunderer, Foxy Fraud, Cult Neophyte. He needed something better than that.
He had his last 5 cards are Secret Passage, Brain Freeze, Prize Plunder, Swindle, and Field Contact.
Oh.
Jandis and Ice Barrier?
So it was Prize Plunder that he was looking for. I mean, he has the Vanessa Van Cleef. Vanessa Van Cleef gives him a Prize Plunder, actually.
Yeah.
That was the last card played.
And he got rid of the Talon, importantly.
Yes.
So the Alexstrasza won't be drawn. And gets an Ice Barrier up. Oh.
Oh, TJ, the board tension. There's so much going on. And
there's too much board tension. I can't handle it.
And Viper doesn't have the kill. He knows that the secret was played. And now, if it's Ice Barrier, attacking the face could end up being something that bites Viper back in a way that he does not want. And Gaby is very close to stabilizing. He's got 2 of the best cards in this deck ready to go, and he just has to fade these last couple cards. Viper sees the Ice Barrier.
It gives him some good information so he can use this to start attacking the minions, but he knows he's out of resources. And Gaby will very likely have a board lead after this. He can only clear off 5 power. He's still going to leave 8 up on the board. He knows that there's a Jandis still left. I mean, the rest of Gaby's deck is actually quite good. The Devolving Missiles, honestly, hitting the Talon is such a huge deal because not having access to just straight up Alexstrasza and pulling a card from the deck also, right? So that he's not just drawing Alexstrasza on a turn.
It's true. Viper starting to systematically pick apart the board, recognizing that this might come down to a grindy value battle, but the best cards from Gaby's deck are waiting. Field Contact comes in, although, you know, I'm kind of wondering from Gaby's perspective, what is he going to be able to pick up here with that Jandis Barov? That's much more important. He's down to just his last few cards.
Oh, those are big!
Kubarashi Berserker. Do you choose to take the hit? I guess Kubarashi Berserker, because you want to make sure that the taunt can survive, and that's what he chooses.
Now those are 5 drops, Dan.
Those are some 5-costed minions.
So he really, there's a couple breakpoints here. He just needs to either clear off as much stuff as possible from the board, or is he setting up lethal if he clears off some other stuff? He could trade this into the 3-2, base with Vanessa, dagger attack to Penflinger. And then Viper needs Secret Passage. He got 1 Secret Passage left in his deck. And he picks up Cult Neophyte. Oh.
Wow.
He had... I mean, there really wasn't that many good top decks. He had Secret Passage and Kazakis. Really, those were his only two good options. And now I don't think it was. There's lethal. Is there lethal presented on board? 5, 8, 10, 12 damage on board. And he can't remove any more with Alexstrasza in the hand. That's game. I think that's game. I think Gaby might have done it.
It looks like I'm counting it. I don't see an opportunity for Viper to turn this around. Unless there's something that we're missing, maybe there's some teacher's pet death rattle, but he sees that there's nothing dying. And I think Gaby has realized it as he has overcome with emotion, recognizing that he may have just done it. 2, 4, 7, 9, 11, 12, 13. That is more than enough. Gaby has done it in a 5-game marathon series. He has gone the distance, and the prophecy has been foretold that there would be a new young champion coming up in 2021, and he has done it. He has grinded. He is your Masters Tour Orgrimmar champion. Congratulations to Gaby from France. The 15-year-old phenom is going to take home $25,000 US and almost certainly a lock for a European Grandmaster spot. The ultimate prize that he's been working years for.
Let's go, Dan. Let's get some Gaby jams going on here. I'm jamming myself. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure to watch Gaby throughout this entire event. We've seen him on stream a bunch. Just the sheer passion that he has for the game and for winning. You can see how much he's invested in each and every match that he plays. And that's really cool because I feel like sometimes we see a lack of that. And I just love to watch him. I'm glad now that he's pretty much a lock for Grandmasters. I think he is. And that we're going to get to see him for some time now because he is the new guard, right? He's here to challenge players like Viper who have been around for a long time and have had that resume. But now it's Gaby's turn, and a well-deserved victory. Many times throughout these series, he's taught me things about the decks, and you know, a lot of times that doesn't happen. Not saying that I know everything about Hearthstone, but usually things are pretty straightforward. But Gaby finds time after time ways to be creative with plays, and just some absolute bonkers Hearthstone, Dan.
Incredible. Just watching the ascent of such a young, hardworking, and passionate young teenager in the scene, having put in endless amounts of hard work into grinding ranked legend. Ever since the age of 10, he was hitting rank 1. And, you know, after so many times playing in these tournaments, it does feel like winning these is just so difficult because the odds are stacked against you. But with good decks, tight play, and being able to stick to your guns, Gaby from France has become the Orgrimmar champion and being able to join us in a future season for Grandmaster. Very well done. Also, tip of the cap to Viper. Love the fact that these two played. I apologize for not bringing this up earlier, but there was some fun exchange on Twitter where Viper said, hey, I'm looking for decks. You know, Gaby, you know, can I copy your decks? Can I copy your homework? And Gaby's like, sure, just $10 and I got you. I'm pretty sure they were joking. I'm not sure that's actually how they collaborated. But either way, a great story to wrap up what was a fantastic weekend of Hearthstone games. Couldn't be happier for the guy. And ultimately, you know, when we look back at this could be the beginnings of another dominant run, TJ. We've seen these tournaments be the spark plug that has ignited some of the hottest streaks that we have seen in any competitive card game ever, where players just go on dominant performances with like 90% win rate across the board. It's absolutely insane. Could we be seeing the beginnings and emergence of another dynasty-like run from Gaby in the next couple of months, even next couple of years? We're about to find out.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool to see his progression as a player as well. Kind of hard to believe that he can go up from here because what he showed us this weekend, and not only this weekend, but throughout the past year, right? As he's made his rise as one of the most prominent ladder grinders, and now one of the best Masters Tour players. And shout out to the other players in the semifinals as well. We gave that shout out to Viper, but Bly's another top 4. I thought he was going to go for 3 Masters Tour victories, but was cut short by Viper and Floki too, another very promising European player who gained some much needed points and has now in just the past couple Masters Tours, is it 2 or 3, has performed exceptionally well and could be a front runner for European Grandmasters as well. So it's been a pleasure to watch this unfold at the end of the day.
Let's take a look at the standings of where players sit after a weekend of competition. As we do give out a lot of money, these promotion standings is what's really on the minds of a lot of players when they enter a Masters Tour. Alutimu, his dominant performance, his grip over APAC is not relinquished whatsoever, but we do have a couple of players behind him that might be able to challenge all the way down to Trihyson, Lamby Series, Give Please, Flurry, Glory, Xiaodai, and Okainsuke. They look like a lot of APAC GMs that currently are there, and that's correct because the APAC players, the APAC GMs, are showing up when it comes to Masters Tours.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Ali Tembu, Lamby Series, Give Please, Glory, where you got to go pretty far down the list to find a non-GM. So cool to see that dominance of players that already are in Grandmasters, but still trying to prove themselves. And we can move over to the European Grandmasters promotion standings now. And I think these point totals are going to be a little bit higher. There you go, Gaby, a firm lead with 44. And then we have Frenetic, who's already Grandmaster, Floki, JU, and then, again, more Grandmasters. Letta, Bunny Hopper, Bly's, and then Turna at 22 points, rounding out Europe.
A great mix. There also is one region that we haven't shown yet.
Oh, geez.
Numbers are
Don't do it, Dan.
eye-popping. That's right.
Don't do it, Dan.
Don't look away. Don't look away, TJ. It's time to face the music. Let's look at the promotion standings for Asia, or for Americas rather.
Oh yeah.
Now, because the players had so many points, TJ, we had to cut off a 0 from all of them. It was just too much to fit on the screen, TJ. It would make the other regions look bad. Monsanto with another top 8 performance, able to be number 1. Dreadeye, just saying, if he ever feels like coming out of retirement, can join us. Kayla's Luna, McBanterface, who we also saw on broadcast, both of them tied at 4th. And then Rami Peacehawk and Dar Binks. The future of Americas is bright, TJ.
Yes, it is. Really impressed by Monsanto getting that 260-point total across the Masters Tour. I mean, what is that? 9 times the amount of points that Gaby got? That's weak stuff coming from Europe. I don't even know how it's possible to get 9 times the amount of points that he got since he won an event. But I am looking forward to America's Grandmasters in the future because at least we do need some players to challenge what we have, because it's the only way to improve is to get new blood in there, new ideas. Dan, and even though we may have only had 1 player in the top 16, even though we didn't have any players in the top 4. I'm still an America's fan through and through, Dan.
It's only a matter of time, TJ, as we rise. It's fun to let other regions get a chance every now and then, but Americas will rise up. But, of course, the day does belong to Europe. They completely swept the field into the top 4. And, of course, France once more wins yet another Masters Tour. How long until another country even can challenge them as number 1 right now in Hearthstone? And also, when you look at the standings, this is what you want to see, a mix of the Grandmasters players who are also with the Masters players in the mix for the standings, right? You get to see a good composition of players who have been there, of players who are rising up, and people who want to continue to prove that it wasn't a fluke. I'm looking at players like Frenetic, who also made a really deep run, even though he might be in jeopardy of losing his Grandmaster spot. If the trend continues, shows why he is a scary player. And that's just the beginning, right? We talk about the future of competitive Hearthstone in terms of the players. What's it going to look like when some players inevitably take a step back? Who will take their place? And I think that the future is very bright. That does it for us, TJ. Thank you for your closing thoughts. We appreciate everyone who's tuned in throughout the entire weekend. Please watch Grandmasters throughout the next week. We'll be back. Specialists will come back for one more week, and then we have another opportunity to check out some different formats like last year's standings. And then just after that will be playoffs. The first season of Grandmasters will come to a close before you know it. So make sure to subscribe here, youtube.com/Hearthstone Esports. That does it for us. From Frodan, TJ, from Derek Brown, Gia, and Lorinda. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time for more Hearthstone action.